that 80% of workers use taxis to and from work, and yet that whole industry doesn't receive any kind of subsidy. We want these and other demands to be addressed. So we have a complete, from the Saftu perspective at least, over 50 pages of document we have submitted to NEDLEC demanding radical transformation of our society at the economic level. Thank you very much. And your question was, to me?
No, just the one about foreign nationals being seen as cast as the perpetrators of crime.
In our statement, we are pointing out that unfortunately there are some extremist groups in South Africa that are diverting attention away from the real crisis, the youth, black youth in particular, the women, and generally the black population is facing in society. They are now beginning to find scapegoats. They scapegoating in particular migrant workers to suggest that if we were to chase out of this country every migrant laborer, we will solve the crisis we inherited from colonial apartheid era that have placed 12.4 million South Africans out of employment. There are people who are telling everybody that all we need to do is to chase out in the main the African migrants who are in South Africa. They won't say anything about the European migrants. They will say little about the Asian migrants. The target in the main is the African migrant workers, who are also victims of the same mismanagement as the South African working class is facing. So workers, instead of uniting against the shop owners who are taking advantage of the vulnerability of workers from Mozambique, Malawi, Zimbabwe, everywhere, instead of uniting against the employers, they say we must target and unite against migrant laborers. Instead of uniting against the truck owners who are exploiting the vulnerability of other workers from the region, they're saying that no, we must target these migrant laborers and chase them out of the country. Instead of targeting the mine bosses and the government that have allowed over 6,000 mines to be not habilitated, leading to a crisis that have been exposed by the ENCA and many others as recently as this week, that shows that actually those unhabilitated mines have wealth that is totaling to a staggering 41 billion rands. 41 billion rands left unattended because the capitalists were chasing trillions in Ghana and elsewhere in South Africa. Obviously, there will be syndicates. 41 billion rands is no small change. Syndicates, criminal syndicates, have ascended into South Africa. And now we are facing the crisis that we are facing. So, above that, it is this government that is playing the xenophobic card, that is actually responsible for what they call, what is the term they are using? What is they call that, whatever term, meaning that we actually have no borders. When the minister says we have no borders, we should be demanding that the minister be fired and that the minister must be sent to prison, not the people who saw borders wide open and in desperation of their poverty walked through. Who is responsible for maintaining peace and order, law and order in this country? Is it the migrant laborers or is it the government that is now playing the Zeno card in order to divert attention from the fact that they built a wall of 34 million, was it 34 million? A piece of a washing wire somewhere there around Limpopo. They eat there, and then they come around and say, we have no borders. The same people, can you believe it? We must arrest them. And the citizens of this country must be organized to the point to say, we are not going to go for the desperate migrant laborers from the African continent, but we are coming for you, the people who have created the mess that we find ourselves in. That's where we stand. We are absolutely opposed to xenophobia. We're absolutely opposed to diverting the crisis of capitalism towards the other migrant workers in South Africa. We believe that these formations must chase the restaurant owners taking advantage, not the workers. Our responsibility is to unite workers and to unite them against the truck owners, to unite them against this government allowing mine bosses to leave 6,000 unrehabilitated mines all over the Republic. The enemy is the state and the capitalist class, and we are refusing to be united against each other as workers, irrespective of our country of origin.
Thanks, Noba. Let's take further hands. I had you, and then yes.
Hajra Margie, also from Business Day. You're promising the mother of all strikes. You're promising rolling mass action. You are promising that you will win on the streets and then negotiate in the boardroom. However, how do you do this given that the working class, yes, coming out of 1996 neoliberalism and coming out of state capture, is facing a massive legitimacy and credibility crisis? The enemy is still within. Those factions that won, those leaders that were imposed are all still there. And I mean, if union leadership were not facing a working class crisis, more people would be unionized. Is that not the first thing you need to do in order to win that public credibility to lead this action?
The only way that the working class can regain its credibility, legitimacy in the eyes of workers is when the working class organizations, such as the TAC, takes up the battles on behalf of the working class. And there can be no Chinese wall between the need to recruit more activists to join the TAC or the Assembly of the Unemployed and the need to build the structures of the TAC and the Assembly of the Unemployed and all of our formations as we mobilize them to take up the campaigns that will address the crisis that they are facing. So there's no Chinese wall whatsoever. We've got to recruit, we've got to build and rebuild our structures, we've got to be campaigning, because the only way of regaining the trust is by campaigning again. It's true that working class in South Africa have weakened itself tremendously, fragmentization, and have allowed the ethos from the other side to permeate right into our organization, such that we have to deal with greed, with money crisis that is causing more factionalism and more cutthroat politics and all of that we've mentioned. But we have no option but to continuously restart until workers regain their trust and until we can change the arrows of members of workers or members of the working class who are members of our formations to go back to where we were, at least in 2007 and before that.
Thank you. So, ENCA, is this a joint strike with Cosatu on Wednesday? And what is the exact response do you want to see from government?
Look, on the ground there will be common action. All of these marches that we are announcing here are marches where Cosatu itself have advertised that its own members must be assembling in the same spots. So it will be joint action. It will be unit in action. On our side, we're not coming alone. We are a broad front of working class formations, and as we're saying, we're not going to divide workers on the basis of the logos. We want them to be in the streets together from tomorrow on Thursday. And we have tried to meet with Cosatu very hard, by the way, at the national office bearer level. There was misunderstanding, I felt, and I suspect there were ego problems, and there was a spirit of a competition that we must eliminate over a period of time, or fears of being dominated by this or that other group. We're going to learn to work together, and if we have, preferably we should have a press conference jointly with everybody, and we have not achieved that, but we will achieve that in the future, surely.
Just a small comment. So if you've not read Cosatu and you've not ironed out these things, how do you have a joint speaker list?
There have been joint meetings in the provinces, okay, and we're not going to interfere with that. In fact, Saftu celebrates that and applaud the provincial structures of both Saftu, Cosatu, and other unions, as well as a host of other formations who have been meeting to plan the marches together. The only province where this was not possible was in KwaZulu-Natal, but everywhere else, the marches will be joint.
Further questions in house? In the absence of none, let me read. The ones on Zoom. We have Kulegani Magubani from Fin24 has two questions. One is, how many people can we expect to see out in their numbers demonstrating on Wednesday in total? And secondly, is there a sanction being considered for NUMSA for its inability to provide financial support to this working class mass action, albeit for financial reasons? Those are the two questions from Kulegan. The other question is coming from William Horn, who's also from Media 24. The question is, with all the mentioned price reductions called for, as well as the increases in expenditure, could you summarize where the funding for these steps should come from?
I'm not alone. To answer difficult questions. Ask other comrades to also contribute. What was the first question? The first question was easier.
The first question is, how many numbers are we expecting?
Oh, no. We're not emphasizing on the numbers of people that will be in the marches. And in fact, we're not going to see anything close to what we saw in 2018 in Johannesburg, because we're facing a challenge of the fact that there are no trains in Johannesburg, there's no trains in Cape Town. That's a killer for any mass formation. Without the trains, we are done. The taxis, they can support us, but the taxis take 15 people, 12 people, 10 people only. And so we're not emphasizing on the big numbers on Wednesday and Thursday. We are emphasizing on the need of workers to stay at home, not to go to work, to embark on a protected general strike, to shut this economy down. That's the emphasis for Thursday. But at the same time, we're calling on those who have made means, and Saftu is laying out some transport in a very minimum way within our levels of affordability. And for those, we're asking workers to get into not just workers, unemployed, and the women, and the working class formations to get into those buses and to join the marches. But in the main, we want people to stay at home on Thursday and not to go to work.
The other question,
that's a shutdown.
The other question which you must answer was, what sanction?
No, there will be no sanction for NUMSA. NUMSA wrote us a letter to say, look, comrades, we are fully behind the shutdown. We formed part of the National Congress. We formed part of the National Executive Committee meeting. We are fully behind the strike. But NUMSA also, however, adds that, look, you know that we are coming out of a Congress. We spend millions of rands, and you know that we are picking up 2 disputes in the sector we're organizing. We're preparing for the strikes in those sectors of the economy. You know that we're involved in a protracted legal battle flowing from the National Congress. And therefore, NUMSA will not be in a position to lay out buses, trains, and other financial support as it normally does in the Saftu organized action. We have to respect that. In fact, it's not only NUMSA facing that financial challenge. SAPU have also written us a letter, the policing union, to say, comrades, you know we are having regional congresses towards provincial, and we have a national congress. There's a limitations to what we can do in 2022. Unions will always face those challenges from time to time. I don't think that there's anything that we need to shout about NUMSA or SAPU unable to lay out transport for members. But NUMSA members are on the ground and they're mobilizing. If you look at our social media network, you will see they're all over. Where we don't need money, they're mobilizing on the ground. I can't ignore the fact that I saw a social media posting of one regional chairperson of NUMSA in Sedibeng region openly advocating for NUMSA members to ignore the call. That's not the mandate of NUMSA. NUMSA have not changed to us, and we're going to hold them accountable on the basis of the letter, not on the basis of some angry person speaking outside the court and then assuming that he represents the entirety of the members of the organization. The members of the organization, you see them, they are all over, they are mobilizing. They are going to be joining the strike on the 24th. Thank you very much. The last question was?
The last question is, where will the money come from?
But we have said this over and over again, that we want at least R1 trillion to be set aside for the government to use to intervene in the period of the crisis we are facing. All other progressive governments, or even liberal governments, such as the United States, have had to do the same thing that we are refusing to do, to put aside a sizable amount of new money, not money shifted from other services, of new money. And we have suggested where that money can come from, including, in particular, we've asked for what is the term that we're using, that the Reserve Bank must be using to intervene to get us new money. Quantitative easing. There's a concrete proposals that we have placed on the table. Without that type of an intervention of at least R1 trillion, with the current crisis we are facing, not only as a result of COVID and now the climate change calamity unfolding in KwaZulu-Natal, but also because we've hardly recovered from the 2008 and 2009 world economic crisis. We've done absolutely nothing about that. So we reiterate the call. Put on the side a sizable intervention, money to intervene to get the economy going and to save our jobs. That's the first thing we say as for an immediate intervention. The second issue we have said in the long run is that this economy is not sustainable because it is an economy that is still operating on the basis of that old economic model designed by the colonialists that saw South Africa as a place where they will extract mineral resources for them to be beneficiated and create jobs, secondary, third industries elsewhere in the world and increasingly in China, We want the structure of the South African economy to be changed. We want, in particular, the government to focus on rebuilding our manufacturing industry and to re-industrialize our economy. That's where we believe the agenda of decent work will emanate from. That's the second point. The third point, people say, where will the money come from for 1,500? Hold on, where have you been? Don't you know even the South Africa's economic history? This government inherited a taxation system from the National Party wherein corporates were taxed at 54% on the eve of the democratic breakthrough of April 1994. In 1992, corporates were paying 54% of corporate taxes. Our government were convinced, under the name of creating a conducive environment, which have never been conducive. The only thing that is really conducive in South Africa is the profits in the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. But they were convinced that they must create a conducive environment, and that conducive environment meant that they must now cut the corporate taxes from that 53% to 27%. In fact, they're still aiming to drive it further to 25%. If you look at what the minister may present on the 26th of October this year, that's trillions and trillions of rands of lost revenue. That's where the money should come from. I know that a lot of people do not like what we're hearing because it goes straight to the other side of the class divide. The second thing that we've been saying is that, but the biggest thieves here in South Africa are wearing suits. They have private jets. They have swimming pools that can fill the longest rivers in the African continent, as Joe Slovo used to say. They are thieves. They are raking billions every year through illicit cash outflows, estimated to be how much this year or last year?
400 billion.
Up to 400 billion rands gets shifted out of the South African economy and gets invested and hidden somewhere else in safe havens, they call them. We have been asking this government, do something. And when we push this and push it, the government came back 2-3 years ago under Pravin Gordhan to say, we've done well, clap hands for us. We have found 50 billion, we found 50 billion. 50 billion from 400 billion rands that leaves the shores of this country illegal every year. The thieves are stealing 35 to 40% of government procurement budget. They're stealing 25 to 40% of government procurement on the table, under the table. And that's estimated to be 250 billion rands annually. Where's government to act? None. I suspect because they are themselves business people. They are complicit. And government is allowing these guys to dodge their responsibility even to the tax as exposed by the commission appointed by government under Judge Dennis Davis. He estimated that a year they are on a minimum dodging their responsibility to the tax person to the amount of 50 billion rands. How much will we need for introduction of the basic income grant?
We will need 200 billion for 1,500.
200
Billion.
Billion.
On a yearly basis.
At least half of what is being stolen by the guys in suits can remain here and pay the basic income grant. I'm not even talking about the corporate taxes or the tax dodging schemes and all of that. Just half of the illicit cash outflows amounts can pay the basic income grant in full and make the unemployed workers happy and give them the hope, instead of taking a risk that all of us know one day will be one day. One day a blue light brigade will knock down a child and this country will catch fire. Even the likes of Thabo Mbeki now accept that that's a possibility. It's going to happen any moment. But the neoliberal says, oh, no, the signature to the rating agencies are important. Let's ignore the plight of our own people as long as we are in the good books of the rating agency, IMF and the World Bank. They are going to have to make a choice. We're starting a process. We may not have the most perfect start on the 24th, but eventually we will succeed to get the working class holding hand in the streets everywhere in the country until the shop squads of the thugs in Pretoria are chased out. But because that's what they are. They are not the real capital themselves. They are just shop squads.
Yes.
We're done, comrades, and thank you very much for.
There's another question.
Just last question. From News Market. So, calling essentially for an overhaul of the current model or structure of the state. Then what, Mr. Babu? We even have capacity to start all over again from the ground up. If at this level you say there is no capacity.
There's no doubt that the state capacity has been hollowed out. There's no doubt. Everybody accepts that we don't have the same capacity in the government that we used to have at some point. No doubt about that. That is our reality. But what do you do? Do we say we have no capacity in the state and we're not going to build it because we are waiting for the powder keg to implode? Or are we going to say, no, there is a danger this society is finding itself in. We have to act now to avoid a calamity, a social crisis calamity, which is already unfolding. Look, Chief, we are the second most depressed nation in the whole world as we speak. Our kids are committing suicide left, right, and center, in particular the young men. Our kids are being raped inside the institutions of learning. If you look at the statistics that was issued last week, they say in that 3 months, 76 kids were raped in the schools. Workers are being raped inside the public transport system, in the taxis, in the buses, in the trains. Are we going to continue to just make these things just statistics instead of standing up and uniting? I think we should stand up and unite and force a change. We want the overall of the economic structure. We want and government to nationalize the mines, not under them, but under workers and the communities that were lucky to find themselves occupying land underneath of which is minerals. We want ISCO back so that we can restructure the economy using our own cheap steel again. We want ESCOM to be nationalized again so that we can go back to the days of cheap electricity that is affordable and that is reliable. We want PRASA to be put back in the hands of the people so that we can have affordable, safe, and efficient public transport system again. We want all of these things, and we know that without them, we are doomed. And there is no better time to start but now. Thank you very much.
There are no questions.
No, there are no. Why you want the press conference of 2 hours?
No, they've invited people. We must give them the best satisfaction. If there are no questions, we will obviously bring the briefing to an end. We thank you for coming and honoring our invitation. Those who joined us via Zoom, we also thank you for spending the time to attend this briefing. Next time do so. We hope to see you covering our events on Wednesday. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ahmad.
Thank you, guys. I'm okay. How are you?
Can we just have just 2 minutes on the side? That's a question that I need to
To where?
just to you want now
2 hours and more. All right, cool.